in the quiet hills of 17th century Italy, in a small town called Mercatello, a child was born whose life would become a mirror of divine suffering. Her name was Ursula Giuliani. From her first breath, the air around her seemed charged with something unseen. Her mother, devout and tender, whispered into her ear, "Belong to Jesus," and the words took root like fire. As a little girl, she loved laughter and play, but her heart often turned toward the crucifix that hung in the corner of their home. Once, at the age of 5, she was caught pressing her lips to the wounded feet of Christ, carved in wood. "Why do you do that, child?" her sister asked. Ursula answered, "Because I want to love him where he hurts most." That sentence would become the prophecy of her life. When her mother died, Ursula was only 7. At the funeral, she placed her cheek against the coffin and said, "Mama, I will find you in Jesus." The years that followed were marked by inner fire. She saw visions of Christ crowned with thorns, of the Virgin Mary in tears, of angels calling her to a life of sacrifice. The world around her began to fade, like scenery behind glass. Her father, a merchant of strict discipline, planned to marry her to a wealthy man. But Ursula refused. She knelt before him and said, "Father, I am already promised to the King of Heaven." In anger, he struck her, but she did not flinch. "You may break my body," she said, "but not my vow." After years of resistance, he surrendered. At 17, she entered the Capuchin convent of Città di Castello, taking the name Sister Veronica, the woman who wiped the face of Christ. It was no coincidence. Her life would be a living veil of compassion. The convent was poor and cold, the stone floors unforgiving. But Veronica found warmth in prayer. She sought not ecstasy, but intimacy. "To love him," she wrote, "is to suffer with him." She fasted, kept vigils, cleaned the dirtiest corners, and cared for the sick sisters. Yet inside her burned a secret fire. In prayer, she often fell into trance, her body trembling as though struck by invisible light. She began to feel pain in her hands and feet, faint echoes of the wounds of the cross. Terrified, she begged God to take it away. But one night, as she prayed before the crucifix, a vision came. Christ standing radiant yet wounded, his 5 wounds blazing with light. He said, "My daughter, I seal you with my love." Then 5 rays of fire burst from his wounds and pierced her own hands, feet, and side. She fell to the floor, blood mixing with tears, whispering, "My Jesus, you have written yourself in me." For the rest of her life, she carried those wounds. They bled every Friday. The sisters wept. The priests doubted. Some accused her of deception. The church sent confessors and physicians to test her. They probed her wounds, watched her day and night. But the marks remained, the blood pure and fresh, the scent of roses filling the air. "Let them doubt," Veronica said. "Truth bleeds, but never dies." Her cell became a sanctuary of both agony and joy. She wrote in her diary, a vast ocean of nearly 22,000 pages, the story of her soul. "Love wounded me, and in the wound, I found love." Her writings speak of a divine union so intimate, it frightened even her confessors. "I live," she said, "in his heart, and he lives in mine. We are one flame with 2 breaths." Yet she never saw herself as holy. "I am the smallest dust under his feet," she wrote, "but even dust glows when the sun touches it." As years passed, her pain deepened, but so did her joy. When asked how she could bear it, she answered, "The cross is heavy only until you embrace it. Then it carries you." The years moved like shadows across the cloister walls. Yet within her, the light only grew stronger. Sister Veronica had become abbess now, mother to the women who once doubted her. They saw her bleeding hands, the thorns that sometimes marked her brow, and still she smiled with a serenity that disarmed fear. She spoke softly, never of miracles, only of love. "Don't seek the wounds," she told them. "Seek the one who fills them with light." Every Good Friday, her body became a living crucifix. Blood flowed, but her eyes shone brighter than pain. The sisters said that when she prayed, her cell glowed faintly, and a fragrance of lilies filled the air. Sometimes the sound of a heartbeat, not hers, echoed in the silence. "It is his," she said, "the heart that beats in me." Her confessor, Father Crivelli, once found her collapsed before the tabernacle, her face wet with tears and blood. He lifted her and asked what she had seen. "The world," she whispered, "as one great wound, and Christ bleeding still because we have not yet loved enough." From that day on, she carried not only her own suffering, but the sorrow of others, orphans, prisoners, the dying. She prayed for them with a fire that seemed to consume the air. "Lord," she cried, "if love must bleed to heal, then let me bleed forever." Her writings became a river of revelation. She spoke of divine love as something both tender and terrible, a fire that purifies everything it touches. "The soul," she wrote, "is the mirror of his passion. When he bends toward us, he sees himself in our wounds." To her, pain was not punishment, but participation. She called it the sweet school of love. In her visions, she saw Christ placing a crown of roses on her head, each rose tipped with blood. "These are the joys of my heart," he said. "Will you wear them?" She bowed and answered, "Always." In the convent's chapel, she would sometimes rise from prayer with her arms extended like a cross, her voice singing softly in Latin, "Amor meus crucifixus est," "My love is crucified." The sisters, trembling, would kneel, for they felt heaven had entered their midst. Outside the cloister, news spread of the bleeding nun. Pilgrims came from far away, bringing petitions, tears, and awe. Some came skeptical and left in silence, touched by the purity of her gaze. She never sought fame, and when praised, she said, "Do not look at the candle, look at the flame." Yet the flame took its toll. Years of fasting and ecstasy drained her strength. Her body bent under invisible weight. Her heart beat irregularly, her breathing shallow. She told the sisters, "My lamp is nearly spent, but its oil is love." In her last months, she endured a mysterious illness that left her paralyzed from the waist down. "He is teaching me," she said, "to walk in the Spirit." Her confessor recorded that even then, her face radiated joy. "The closer I am to death," she said, "the nearer I feel his breath." On July 9, 1727, as dawn broke, she asked the sisters to open the window of her cell. The morning light poured in, soft and golden. She whispered, "He's coming." Her eyes fixed on the crucifix, and her lips moved silently. Those near her heard fragments. Love, wounds, union. Then she smiled, a smile of surrender, and the light in her eyes deepened until it seemed to spill outward, filling the room. When she died, a luminous glow surrounded her body. The wounds in her hands and feet shone faintly, like rubies in sunlight. The sisters said her face was so peaceful, it seemed carved from light. For days, her body emitted the scent of roses. Even physicians who came to examine her were silent before the mystery. Her diary, locked in the convent, would later reveal the inner map of a soul who had walked through agony into glory. "The cross," she wrote in her final entry, "is the door through which love enters the world." Centuries later, her writings would be recognized as one of the most profound testimonies of divine intimacy ever written. The Church canonized her as Saint Veronica Giuliani, the mystic of the wounds of love. But beyond titles and miracles, her legacy remains a whisper that every pain, when offered in love, becomes light. The film would end with a single image: her cell, empty now, the crucifix still on the wall. Morning light falls across the floor, forming a cross of gold. In the silence, her voice echoes faintly. Love wounded me, and in the wound, I found love. Then the screen fades to white, pure, quiet, infinite, the color of love redeemed.